Hey, this is Kyle at Projection Hub, and today we're going to be talking about how to write a business plan for a donut shop. Now, this might be for a loan application, or maybe you're trying to pitch an investor, or maybe you're just doing some internal planning. But in this video, I'm going to walk you through an entire fictitious example of a donut shop business plan. It's a free template, so you'll be able to get it for free. Follow along through this video. Use it as a guide as you fill out your own. And the main takeaway, though, is as I go through the business plan, I'm going to highlight the 5 key points that I think will make your business plan go from, okay to great in the eyes of especially a lender. So who am I? My name is Kyle, as I mentioned. And before my time with Projection Hub, I was an SBA lender for almost 7 years. And so I reviewed a lot of business plans, a lot of loan applications, a lot of financial projections, including many different donut shops, and some of which I actually helped get funded, and they open today and are now operating and, alive and well. And so using that experience, I'm going to walk through and cover those 5 key points that I think will make it more likely to get approved for financing. And yeah, so that's going to be what we're going to do here. And I should mention, with Projection Hub, we've helped over 50,000 different small businesses and startups create financial projections for their business loan applications, for their, just having internal planning, pitching investors, you name it. And so if you have any questions throughout the video, feel free to leave a comment. Contact us at support@projectionhub.com. We'd be happy to help and answer any questions. And yeah, and if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. That really helps us as a fellow small business. Consider subscribing. We release a lot of helpful content just about, kind of the financial management of a business and securing loans and that kind of stuff. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. All right, and here we are. We've got the donut shop business plan ready to go. As I mentioned, this is a free business plan template. Link down in the description below. It might even be linked on the screen somewhere here. Go ahead and grab your copy, totally free to use. But I'm going to go through, it's filled out as like a fictitious example mixed with some tips and some different things like that. And so you're not going to want to take this and give it to your lender as it is, but it's structured how you'll need it to be and kind of gives you an idea of, what you can write in your example for each case. And so, why is our business plan important? Maybe this sounds obvious to you, but the purpose of your business plan doesn't need to be, you don't need to educate the lender, especially in an industry like a donut shop, which it's not, unknown or novel. You don't need to do a ton of explaining about the business, or the industry itself and the inner workings of it. But rather what we really want to focus is use our valuable space to demonstrate your specific plan, again, business plan, to go from where you are today to successful. And successful probably depends on, what your goal of the business plan is. If that's to secure financing, then your goal should be repaying the financing. So that's what we want to do, instill confidence. And that's probably a lot of the perspective I'll talk from is for if you're preparing this for like a lender or an SBA loan, which we do have some other content about securing SBA loans, and we can link to that as well. But yeah, so let's go ahead and kind of jump in. Again, I'm going to go through the whole thing, talk through some of the structure, point out some things, and then when I get to those 5 key areas, I'll stop, talk a little bit more, even show you some demonstrations and give you some examples on how to do those things. So let's go ahead and jump in here. Okay, so first thing right off the bat, I'll point out here is you'll notice that the business plan isn't super long. And I think a lot of people, I think it's a myth that people think their business plan needs to be really long to be good. And I would kind of argue the opposite side of that. I think the longer your business plan is, the more of the important details get lost in the shuffle. Now, I'm not telling you to make a 5-page business plan, but 15 to 20 pages, I think, is kind of a sweet spot. And you'll even notice here that almost half the business plan is just financial projections in this example. And we'll talk about that when we get down there. But financial projections are by far the most important part of your business plan, especially if it's a startup. And so we'll get into that a little bit more. So we're really focusing on using 10 pages worth of space here to jam pack that full of really important details. And we'll get into that. So first off, we've got our executive summary. Now, I want you to think of your executive summary as kind of like a cover letter to a resume for a job application. So we're hitting a few high points here, kind of introducing the business and yourself and some of your goals right off the bat. So company overview, again, what are your short-term, long-term objectives? I would encourage you, anytime you're doing goals or objectives, make sure they're measurable, right? Like this is an example, a fictitious example. And so some of the language will be a little fluffier, a little softer than probably I would prefer if I was reviewing a business plan. And so like if your short-term goal is to break even or turn a profit in 12 months, then put that in there. If your long-term goal is to open up a second location in year 5, put that as your long-term goal. Whereas this is kind of saying, make a beloved brand, right? Like that of course should be your goal, but your goals that you outline here should be a little bit more measurable than that. All right, now moving along here, we got keys to success and mission statement. That stuff's all great, and I'm not telling you need to include it or not include it, but like if you're gonna include something in your business plan, make sure it has purpose. So actually put some effort into it. Don't use generic fluffy things that someone's just gonna read over and not pay attention to. That's a waste of your time and a waste of their time and a waste of space in the business plan. One thing I'll point out that I think could be added to your executive summary that I like to see when I was a lender was one point that's kind of like a financial summary or financial overview. So those points could include like, what's your estimated total startup costs, estimated break-even point, how much financing or funding are you gonna require, and what different sources do you plan to get that from? So just some of those key details on the financial side are nice, because that kind of, the lender's reading this, that gives them a quick insight, like, all right, I know that they're going big or they're going small, or they can kind of formulate their plan along the way as they read it, if it's a good fit for them or not. Okay, next up, company description, kind of just an extension of the executive summary. So, but maybe here you can get a little bit more into the weeds on like the company history or the story, like the founding story, the founder's story. This talks about legal structure for the business. Unique selling proposition, I think, is an interesting one. Again, much like the goals, make this actually what makes you different. If your unique selling proposition is going to be, we're going to have the best tasting donuts, that's not really a unique, like your donuts should be good, right? Nobody wants to set out to make bad donuts. And so your unique selling proposition should be something different, right? Is there something you're going to do that no one else is actually doing? Is there something about the experience that you're doing that nobody else is doing? So your unique selling proposition actually needs to be unique, or else I would leave it out. And then your target market, probably speaks for itself, but I think I'm speaking from like in the Indianapolis area. That's where I live. And so that's where a lot of this example is filled out for. But think about like, people probably want to travel, where I live in Indianapolis area, people probably won't travel more than 5, maybe 10 miles to a donut shop. If there's one closer than that, then they're not going to go that far. And so you need to be thinking about people in that sphere, right? Within a 5 to 10 mile radius, who are the people and who are the target audience? Is that the early morning corporate crowd? Is that the, soccer parents, on Saturday mornings? Like maybe you don't have to get that specific, but are you going for like the low cost donut, or are you going for like a high cost decadent, donut kind of experience? And this is a little intro. You'll go into that more later on. Okay, market analysis, and this is going to bring us to our first key point. I know I said I'd mentioned 5. We just haven't gotten to the first one yet. And don't get me wrong, all this other stuff is important. It should be included, but it's more of just like a minimum expectation versus like things that will really set it apart. Okay, market analysis. Here we are going to demonstrate that there's actually room in the market for one more donut shop. And if the market is already pretty saturated or it's really competitive, then we are going to have to demonstrate, well, how are we going to steal some of that market share? And so the market analysis is laying the groundwork of proving that we do in fact think that there's room, and we're trying to convince the lender, like, yeah, they do think that there's also an opportunity in the market, either to disrupt it or to capture some of it if it's already available. And so give a little overview of the industry. You can talk about that there, what the, we see market opportunity down here, but, industry overview, give the lay of the land. Is it highly competitive? Is there a king donut shop that's been around for 100 years and everybody swears by it? That's right down the road. Like, that's important information to talk about. Competitor analysis. I like direct and indirect competitors. Direct is going to be like, who is the most like you? Indirect might be like, the gas station also sells donuts, so they're kind of a competitor, but not really a competitor. Direct competitors are going to be your most important detail here. You should know every single direct competitor within a 10 mile radius of you, but I would go ahead and actually list, 3 to 5 in your business plan, and then talk about what they do well, what they don't do well. So for example, like Puffy Delights, let's say they've been around for 100 years, right? That would be their strength. They are very established, they have a lot of loyalty. but maybe their weakness is they only offer really basic donuts, right? And they don't do like special things, or they don't do large orders. Or another opportunity could be like, maybe your town only has one donut shop, but they have terrible Google reviews. Talk about that, So be humble, talk about and recognize what your competitors do well and what would be hard to compete with them on, but also talk about what you recognize as the opportunity. Again, target market analysis, we already talked about that a little bit up here, so you can go into greater detail on who your actual target market is. And, if you're going to focus on events or large groups or a specific crowd, do that there. So market opportunities, I think that kind of speaks for itself. If no one's doing online ordering, or maybe no one's doing delivery, or I don't know, you can focus on that in here. But key point number 1 is make sure to provide some specific examples of the research you've done to demonstrate the fact that there's actually room, right? So it's one thing to talk about it and describe your competitors and all that kind of stuff, but any kind of proof we can show. Okay, so one obvious way to do this is to have a market research study done. I'm not advocating for that, but that's probably the most obvious example of doing this. Is you could pay for foot traffic and drive-by traffic and someone to come and check out all the other customer or competitors and all that kind of stuff. That's typically really expensive, and I'm not advocating you to do that. That's just an example of why people do that. So I'm going to give you maybe a free example here. And the goal of this is to demonstrate supply and demand. Okay, so one example I like to do is keyword research analysis. So Google has a free tool called Google Ads. I apologize. You can make a free Google AdWords account, and they have a keyword planning tool. And what this enables you to do is to simulate and see how often are people searching for a specific thing in a specific location. And so I wanted to see how often are people searching for a donut shop near me in Fishers, Indiana, which is kind of like a affluent suburb just outside of Indianapolis. And it's going to give us some great information. One is going to be how many times that's actually searched per month on an estimate. So that's helpful to know. It's going to give us some advertising competition, which maybe you're interested in that, maybe you're not. Low, I think, is just a good signal in general. But the most important thing is going to be the trend data here. So this is going to be an indication that there's growth in people searching for that search term. So you can see here, donut shop near me in my area is in the last 3 months up 56%, which 3 month is going to be more seasonal, right? Depending upon the year, that's going to be negative or positive. But year over year, it's up over 180%. That's a huge growth. So a massive growth in the fact that people are increasingly searching for more donut shops. So that is an indication of growth in demand, okay? So that's only one half of the equation. So even if an area has a ton of demand, maybe they already have a ton of donut shops set up, right? So that's one half of the equation. The other thing, if there's specific types of donuts or something like that, like a 24-hour, like you can look here to get more keyword search ideas, but a lot of these are low search volume. I think it's pretty just donuts near me is kind of all we really need to pay attention to, but huge growth. So the other half of that equation is going to be the competitor analysis that we talked about, right? So if we know in our search area, like tons of people are searching for donuts, there's clearly a demand. Make sure you do your competitor research. Do something as simple as zoom out from a Google map, find all, if we're going to be located right here on Geist Reservoir, I want to know all the ones in the radius around that, and then I want to analyze them. Do they have good Google reviews? What do they offer in the menu that other people don't? What's the price ranges? So you want to get a lay of that land, and then you're going to try and compare that to the demand and just find some interesting things there, right? So include that in your business plan. Put that research in your business plan. So that takes that section from your lender to like, oh yeah, they just think that there's room in the market, to, oh, they actually did their homework and there is some growth and there's some opportunity, right? Okay, so that's key point number 1. Moving on to marketing and sales strategy, which will have key point number 2. Outline exactly what your menu is going to be. You can get as detailed as you'd like on that if you're going to have different categories of donuts or, custom made to order donuts or whatever, and include all of that in here, as well as the pricing of that menu and your strategy for pricing. Sales strategy is pretty straightforward, right? People walk in, they buy a donut, right? So that's what you're going to talk about there. You can talk about partnerships, distribution channels. So everything that's included in here, you should have your own version of it. Talk about the fact that you're going to have a website, you're going to post on social media, maybe you're going to have an email list and promotions, and all that kind of stuff is a minimum requirement. You need to have all of that because those are the things you need to do in order to actually run the business successfully. But the key point we're going to talk about, similar to what we just did last section, is provide can we actually demonstrate that when it comes to open up the store, people are going to be there. So we want to demonstrate customer acquisition. And another word for this that's really great is traction. That's very popular in like the tech community. And what traction means is what kind of traction or what kind of momentum is your business going to have going into launch, let's say, right? So what a lender doesn't want to hear, and what they hear a lot of, is that you're going to just open up your donut shop and hope people will show up. If you can give them any sort of examples of how you're hustling and like guaranteeing people are going to show up, or even you're already selling things before, that's music to a lender's ear. Okay. So the two best examples of traction are, one, pre-launch revenue. So you're finding a way to actually already sell and make money before you officially launch the donut shop. Or two, names on a list. So people that are interested and planning on coming and showing up at your business. So let's look at some examples here. I personally like examples 3 and 4 on this list. So example 3 would be like a founders club, right? So leading up to the launch of the donut shop, maybe you've already secured the location, you're doing a build out, whatnot. Or you could even, if you're earlier in the process than that and you're just trying to gauge people's interests so that you can attract lender approval so that you can do a build out, start collecting a list of names of like a founders club. Anybody's name on that list gets a discount for the whole first year as long as they show up within the first month of opening to buy something. And then you can put all the founders club members' names on the wall permanently, right? So this is a creative way to start building a list. So when you can come to your lender and say like, hey, we've already got 1,500 people signed up in the community that really would love another donut shop, that is encouraging to a lender. Another example, number 4, start smaller on the side. You can start selling donuts made to order specifically, out of your home. You could sell them at farmers markets, get some traction, right? So you can come to a lender and say like, I've actually sold 20,000 worth of donuts, in the last 18 months to 175 different people, and 60 of those people are recurring customers. That's amazing, right? That lender knows that you know what you're doing, you know how to make good donuts. You already have some customers, you already have some people that will come to your shop when you open, okay? So that is an example of customer acquisition, of how you can include that. That's not just a way to make your business plan good, but that's just a good thing to be doing, right? That shows a lot of hustle, a lot of grit, and that you're going to do what it takes to make this business work, right? So it's more than just your business plan sounding good. You're doing all of the things that it takes for a business to be successful and for your donut shop to be successful. Next up, operations and management. Here you're going to outline, I guess, exactly what you see here. How does the logistics inside the donut shop actually work? This section doesn't need to be super creative. It just needs to be kind of the industry standard, and that you know what you're kind of talking about here. How many people you might need to have on staff, and point of sale, and your typical hours, and all that kind of stuff. Make sure that is up to snuff in this area. Leading into key point number 3 here for this section, and that's relevant industry experience. So we want to make sure that your business plan leaves no doubt that you know what you're doing and you know what you're getting yourself into. When I was a lender, and actually a donut shop is a great example because this is a real story, there would oftentimes be people who would come from a totally seemingly unrelated career or industry, and they wanted to open up a new business like a donut shop, right? So for example, I worked with someone who was a longtime marketing executive, and then they wanted to quit that job and open up a donut shop. They didn't know anything about making donuts. And so that's a little confusing to a lender, because they're like, well, do you know what you're getting yourself into? But what this person did is, one, they knew how to sell really well. They had great design taste. They could build a brand. They had a lot of transferable skills, and that was really attractive. And what they did is they had a partner in the business who had managed a donut shop for many, many years. So the two of them together rounded out the necessary relevant industry experience to give us, the lenders at the time, I'm not a lender anymore, the confidence that they know what they're doing. Like, we don't have to worry about the fact that if they actually get this thing open, that they're going to be able to sell some donuts and run this thing effectively. So it's a huge red flag to your lender if you're leaving a gap in that experience. So if you don't have all of the experience to not only know what you're doing on the donut side, but also on the business management side, you need to supplement that either with a partner, with strong supporting cast of mentors, key employees that are already signed on and planning to start with you. That's how you fill those gaps and build some confidence. All right, moving along here to the big boy here, financial projections, okay? So as you can see in here, we've got a breakdown of our startup costs. We've got some overview. This is a 5-year overview of some key financial line items like revenue, cost of goods sold, gross profit, net income. Now, before you sign off and your eyes kind of glaze over here, this is always the part that gets a little overwhelming to the startup, but it's vitally important. The business plan is important, but the financial projections are the most important part. And I'm not saying that because we're biased, because we're Projection Hub, but as a lender, we would read the business plan probably once. We would look at the projections a dozen times throughout the process, probably more than that. So these are very important. We got some key ratios. I know it's kind of zoomed out right here, but you got a breakdown of operating expenses, monthly expenses there, and then a 5-year example profit and loss statement, cash flow statement, and a balance sheet statement. Now, full transparency, here comes the sales plug. All of that was made using this template. I've linked this template down below. You can grab it. I promise you, you have to have financial projections. There's 3 ways to make them. 1, pay an accountant to make your projections for you. Definitely an option. Gonna get great projections. Pretty expensive. Probably more than a couple $1,000s. 2, make them yourself. You can certainly do that, but you're going to want to make sure they're reliable and that you kind of know what you're doing, and they can be a little overwhelming. And something you want to avoid with a lender, just a quick tip, is if you give them kind of a bad or unreliable set of projections or numbers, and that's their first impression to your numbers, it's going to be kind of hard to work back from that. So if they point out issues or concerns or ask questions, and you say, oh, actually, I'm not sure, let me go back, and you come back with a different set of numbers, they're going to be like, well, okay, like, what are we doing here? What's real, what's not? And so the first set of numbers you give to your lender, you want them to look good and to be reliable and to make sense. And so your third option is to use a pre-built reliable template, right? So it's kind of the best of both worlds. This template was built by a CPA on our staff. It's been used by dozens of donut shops, if not over hundreds of donut shops. And it's very easy to use. These blue tabs are all only places, and these blue boxes that we're putting in numbers, we're making edits. So startup date, what kind of the things do you need to purchase to get the thing open? Do you have loans planned? This screen looks overwhelming. It's very easy to use. Again, we're only touching these blue boxes. You're talking about customer acquisition up here. How many of those customers turn into regulars? You'll put your menu here, and then some of the direct labor, that's so like hourly labor that's doing that. Okay, so just these blue boxes. We're putting in our monthly expenses. So we've got some categories here. You can do these as a percentage of revenue. You can do them as a fixed number. And then lastly, if you have any salaried employees and owner's draws, you'll include those here. And then it's going to create all of these charts and graphs, and then all of the financial statements that your lender needs and will require. And if they have questions and then you need to make adjustments, you can go back, tweak some things. It'll update all of your financial statements for you, okay? That's linked in the description below. If you stick with me to the end of the video, I'll even give you a discount code. It's already less than $100. It's really good bang for your buck. Also, we offer free support and free review after you complete your projections. So yeah, but financial projections are not key point number 4. You have to have financial projections. Key point number 4 is that they need to be realistic and within industry expectations or industry norms. And you might be wondering, well, how do I know? Like, if you fill this out on your own, how would you know? Well, 1, the template is kind of pre-filled out with like a semi-realistic example, right? We didn't just like fill it out with no research. So it can serve as a guide. The second thing is just to go to Google. Do Google searches. If you're comfortable using a tool like ChatGPT or something like that, you can even ask a question, just like, what are typical ranges for some of these key numbers, right? So cost of goods sold is 25 to 35%. Let's go back and look at our financial projections. Our cost of goods sold, 48%, 42%, and it starts to come down, right? So we're conservative. We're on the higher side. We're estimating we're going to pay higher than the average, right? It's better to be conservative than not, right? So let's go back and look for another one. Net profit margin, 3 to 9%. Okay, let's go back. Net income, we say 17%, 22%, 27%, right? So we're we're a little bit optimistic there. We're a little bit on the high side. So doing that practice where you fill this out to the best of your ability and then go benchmark it against kind of industry norms, then you can go back and say like, well, what am I missing? Can I dial this down a little bit? So you want to get that within ranges. So you want to make sure you fill it out with what's realistic for your financial situation, your plans, what are, typical costs and prices and all that kind of stuff. But then also weight that against some industry averages before you provide that to your lender. If you do that and then provide it to your lender, you're mitigating the chances they're going to have a sticker shock and be like, whoa, this number is out of nowhere, and not being able to explain that. So that's key point number 4. And as we go through here, that's going to pretty much bring us to the end of the business plan. But we've got one more key point to talk about, particularly if you're trying to get a loan, and that is being prepared to demonstrate skin in the game. And skin in the game is basically what are you doing to share in the risk for that loan. So just like if you go to get a house, right, you're going to be required to put in like a down payment of 10% or 20% or whatever type of loan you're getting. And then you're also, the house is the collateral for that loan, right? If you don't pay back the loan, you don't get your down payment back and you also lose that house. Business works very similar. A business loan works very similarly, right? So you're going to have to contribute to the cost of the project. So if you need $100,000 to get the donut shop open, the bank might give you $80,000 of that. You got to come up with the other $20,000. Also collateral. So if you're buying the building, then right there's probably most of your collateral. If you're renting the building, you're not going to have a ton of collateral. You're going to have a collateral shortfall. There's not enough equipment in a donut shop to make up for that gap. So you're going to have to be prepared to compromise on that with a lender, meaning do you have any personal assets you're willing to pledge, whether that's a free and clear vehicle, a second mortgage on your house. It's going to be uncomfortable, but the lender's going to do whatever they can to make sure there's not a collateral shortfall to protect themselves. They're not going to take more than what they need, but they need to try and make sure they get repaid. If there's not a makeup for that collateral, then another way to supplement that would be with cosigners. So the reason I'm telling you all of this is to just be prepared. You don't have to come to the lender and say, I want to give you my house and I want to have 3 cosigners on the loan. But if you know this about your donut shop, that there's probably going to be a collateral shortfall, just get your ducks in order. Know what you have to pledge, what you're comfortable pledging. Talk with someone you think that might be a cosigner that would be willing to help cosign. The signs of a good cosigner is a good credit score, and if they have good income, that's not attached to the success of your business, right? So I'm just telling you, be prepared to have that. Again, you don't have to put that in your business plan, but that will save you some time, certainly, and some uncomfortable conversations if you can just have that lined up and know what you're willing to offer and what you're not. Now, last point that I'll make on that is a lot of people would come to me and say they wanted to keep the business and personal separate, that they had received that advice. That's great advice when it comes to bank accounts and bookkeeping, that kind of stuff. It's not real advice when it comes to getting a loan. You will be personally guaranteeing the loan, and the cosigner will be personally guaranteeing the loan. If the business does not pay back that loan, you will be on the hook to repay that personally. So that's just how it is, and that's how it works. And I just want you to be prepared for that. So that brings us to the end. Let me go ahead and grab you that promo code if you are interested in the projection template. Where did I put that? Here it is. PH20BP will get you an extra 20% off the template. Again, it's already less than $100. I think it's worth it. Free support comes with that. A free review comes with that. So take advantage of that. There's a whole video guide on how to fill the projections out. So if you're wanting to go through that yourself. We also offer a service where we can fill out your projections for you. So you can check out that as well. We even offer a service to write your business plan for you. But I suspect if you're here to get this template, that means you'd like to write it yourself. And I encourage you to do that using this free template. So without further ado, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up or subscribe to the channel. That really helps us. And if you have questions, leave us a comment or email us at support@projectionhub.com. We'd be happy to help, and we will catch you on the next one. Best of luck. Thanks.